everyone, welcome to another video by Outdoor Intrigue. We're here in the beautiful sunny Highlands today. It's unbelievable, it's about 21 degrees up here in the hills. We're just out the back of where we live actually, and it's just gorgeous. So I wanted to bring you a gear review today, and the item which I'm bringing you a review on is the Roclite, the INOV-8 Roclite G 370 Ultralight or Lightweight Hiking Boots. Just a little bit about the boots. The boots themselves are by a company called INOV-8. They're a UK based company. They make a lot of really cool trail running gear and footwear and other bits and pieces. If you haven't checked them out, they're definitely worth having a look at. The boots, the 370 in the name stands for the weight, which is 370 grams per boot. On my scales, they come in at just over 375 grams a boot for size 9.5. So pretty spot on. The G in the name, so the Roclite G 370 stands for Graphene, which is that these boots have a very new technology that INOV-8 have trialed, which is a thin layer of graphene that they use to coat over the sole of the shoe, which is supposed to create a lot of extra longevity and stop them wearing down so much, which is particularly important on ultralight footwear, where obviously you've got a real trade-off to the lastability. So that's a really interesting thing. It's something new that they've introduced in their footwear. No one else in the market does it. The boots themselves obviously are above ankle height, so they are a middle ground between a trail runner and a hiking boot. You've got the more hiking boot style, so you've got a little bit of ankle support, but you've got the weight obviously that you would expect from a much lighter kind of shoe. They're waterproof as well, or claim to be. I'll talk about that in a minute. And they've got a nylon upper. They're not Gore-Tex lined, it's actually the material itself. So the things that I liked about these boots to start with is, number one, the weight. I mean, the reason you're going to buy these is probably because you don't want to have such a traditionally heavy hiking boot on, but you still want something that's going to give you a little bit of ankle support and maybe be good on more technical terrain, which is why I went for these. And that is a real positive. They are light. I mean, 370 grams or around for a hiking boot, I think is a really good weight, to be honest, and you really feel it on your feet. Particularly if you're coming away from a more traditional heavy hiking boot, you're going to really feel the difference having these on your feet. And I've used these for the whole of the West Highland Way and a number of Munros hiking around out, and even some technical ones out in the Noida area, as well as a lot of other hiking. Which brings me on to the next thing I really like about them, which is the longevity of the soles. So the graphene coating really works. These boots have now had over 350 miles in them, and to be honest, the soles are just incredible. I mean, the wear on them, it's amazing. I've had boots that are much heavier and would show a lot more wear after the amount of walking I've done in these. So that's pretty incredible. So that's really the main things I liked is the weight, the fact that they've got a bit of ankle support, and the fact that the soles have such great longevity. Oh, the other thing to mention that I really like about INOV-8 shoes in general, and these ones as well, is the aggressive nature of the tread. So they're designed with the British hills in mind, which means that they've got this really aggressive lug pattern and a good depth, about 6 millimeters. So that walking on traditional, like British style hills, where you've got a lot of grassiness and mud often, it gives you a really good ability with the traction on them, which I found a real positive. And I've had such good grip on these on most surfaces. You know, the only thing they struggle on is like almost all boots on wet rock. But aside from that, they've been brilliant traction-wise. So those are the things I like. Now the things I don't like so much. I'd say, first of all, one real frustration with these boots is the fact that they're really wearing out, and this was right early on they started to, where the toe box joins and you've got this natural foot flex that you'd have. They really started quite early on showing heavy signs of wear, and now I've got a hole right through on both of them, on almost both sides. And that's obviously going to create a real issue in the not too distant future. You know, you've got the soles lasting so well, and then the uppers are not lasting nearly as well, which is, you know, not ideal. They need to obviously look into that. The next thing that really frustrates me is the laces. They've used these tiny laces that INOV-8 do use on some of their shoes, kind of like a weight saving, and they're too thin, they're frustrating, they're difficult. If you've got cold fingers in the morning, like I've woken up from wild camps and these have been like frozen, and pulling the laces on these, they're like cutting into your hands almost. They don't grip as well either because they're round and so thin. I mean, you can change them. I haven't. but you know, it's just a shame. It's something small, but you know, if you're going to be paying a decent amount of money for a pair of boots, then you want to call out the things that are you know, needing improvement, I would say. The other thing that really annoys me is how bad these are with their breathability. So they're waterproof, they say on the side, with this nylon upper. In my opinion, they're basically not waterproof. Long before they had holes in them, if I was walking for any degree of time, even in just reasonably wet grass, they would wet out very quickly. I found them to be really not waterproof. Pretty much from the offset, so they're not like having a Gore-Tex lined boot where you might get a reasonable amount of waterproofing. In my opinion, these are not waterproof boots, and if you have anything that you want waterproof boots for, these are not the ones for you. You could do what I do and use them with Gore-Tex socks as an alternative option. That sometimes works pretty well. But the problem then with them, as well as the lack of waterproofing, is the breathability, right? The breathability on these is pretty terrible, and you really feel the heat if you're hiking in hot weather. And then the frustrating thing with that as well, I found with the wet, is, you know, you'll get wet socks or wet feet, and then they'll stay wet because there's no chance of the breathability on these actually drying them out. They're not kicking out any moisture, it's just staying in there. So much so that I've had these at home drying in the house for 2 days, gone back to them, and they still be wet inside, which is crazy. I mean, it's frustrating, and that's a real shame, because obviously you'd ideally want something, if it's not really waterproof, that then has some breathability so that it can dry out a bit quicker, right? That said, I've done a lot of miles in these boots, and I've had a lot of really good hikes in them, and a lot of times they've lasted up really well. So they're £125, I believe. That's what I paid for them, and I think they generally sell for around that mark. So it's not too much for a pair of boots. If you're wanting something that is a middle ground, they are potentially worth a try. You know, you have to take the negatives that I've called out into account: that lack of breathability, lack of waterproofing, and the potential that you're going to get some heavy wear showing quite early on in the uppers. But then you've got the great tread and a really nice lightweight, relatively supportive boot. So overall, I know I wouldn't not recommend them, but I wouldn't say they're the best thing on the market. They definitely got their positives and negatives. Anyway, worth checking out. Check out some of INOV-8 stuff, they're pretty cool. I've recently switched over to a new pair of shoes. I'm trying out the Hoka 1-1 Speed Goat 4s, which are low cut trail running shoes with a lot of tread, so a lot of cushioning on them. No waterproofing, so just very breathable. Very different kettle of fish, but I'll bring you a review once I've done some more miles. I just did a Monroe in those yesterday, and I've been hiking in them quite a bit, but I'll put a few hundred miles in them probably before I give you my opinions. Anyway, that's it. That's what I think of them. If you want to know anything, just leave us a question in the comments. Check us out on Instagram, we're at Outdoor Intrigue. If you like our videos and you enjoy this kind of content, and subscribe on YouTube, we're always bringing you new stuff. We'll try and be a little bit more frequent wherever we can. Otherwise, peace out from up here in the Highlands, and take care everyone in these crazy times.